Alrighty, so we visited with council about this issue back in 2013. We were looking at the possibility of creating an ordinance of some kind. Many North Texas cities, or several of them, have an ordinance like this. We were looking specifically at Carrollton, where they would have an ordinance that governed hotel motels, and we were going to pattern ours after the multifamily inspection program, and it's just a way to drive down the calls for service at those facilities for us. The mandatory inspections would be triggered by that calls for service, and typically when they do a two-tiered approach. Tier 1 is usually less than an average of one call per service per room per month, and then Tier 2 is anything greater than that. So the Tier 2 is who you would routinely go in and do a bunch of inspections on. We would try to do a complete inspection of each hotel motel twice a year, and then do a 100% inspection of the rooms at least once a year. You know, pretty ambitious goals, honestly. The areas we would inspect, of course, the grounds, make sure it's free from litter, abandoned vehicles, you know, that kind of stuff. Make sure the exterior lighting is good, the fencing is in good shape. The units themselves, make sure they're clean, free of insects and rodents. Make sure everything inside works, electrical, plumbing, etc. And of course, from a fire protection standpoint, making sure that smoke detection and fire sprinklers and alarm work, that people can exit safely, and they observe our smoking ordinance. You know, pretty ambitious, really. It would require additional people to be able to do that. Next slide. As you can imagine, we got some significant pushback from hoteliers as we pitched this idea to them. They thought, number one, we were picking on them by making them do things that a lot of them already did anyway and maintained, and that we were picking on everybody when really we had a few people in mind that we wanted to deal with. So we put it on hold. The city of Carrollton in particular had some litigation going at the time. We were watching their ordinance to see how that survived the legal challenge before we decided if we wanted to move forward. So with that, I want to pitch it off to Assistant Chief Kevin Deaver. I think you've all met him before. He did a lot of research on another alternative that we can consider besides an ordinance. I want to let him talk about that.
Thanks, Chief. So when we started looking at this again, we wanted to see what area cities had been successful in the program. And we looked at the Colony, Carrollton, Grand Prairie, Irving, and the city of Dallas. And I want to talk about one specifically, and that's the Colony. In 2017, the Colony filed a lawsuit against their budget suites due to the calls for service that they had at that time. Excuse me. And by the summer, the property owners at the budget suites had agreed to crime reduction strategies. By the end of 2017, they saw a 28% reduction in their calls for service. They were averaging right around 800 calls between 2014 and 2016. In 2017, we had 732. So we're pretty equal to them. Some of these cities enacted ordinances while others used a state law that was already in effect. The Colony used Chapter 125 of the Texas CPRC, and that law has been successful in closing down crack houses, brothels, gang headquarters, and other bases of operations for criminals. And the last bullet is the one that we would concentrate on with our hotels. With both the ordinance and the state law, the objective is to hold the property owners and managers civilly responsible for what happens criminally on their property. So they would be held responsible for what others are committing on their property. The positive results of this, just like the calls for service, there are a lot of man hours and time, significant staff time that goes into these calls for service and investigating offenses. The positive results, the less calls for service you have, then the less man hours that you have dealing with those issues. And with that comes a savings. Each time we respond out to these locations, it costs the city money. Sorry. The goals of nuisance abatement, first off, is to gain compliance of the property owner and then displace that element from the city and provide a safer environment for all the public. When we deny offenders a location for their base of operations, that can reduce crime, and then we secure the property owner's cooperation. When both of those are achieved, we believe that neighborhood revitalization can happen. These are some of the specific crimes that the nuisance abatement law pertains to. I want to talk a little bit about gang activity at the bottom. There are a lot of offenses that gang members can commit that would fall into this. If a gang member spray paints or graffitis a fence, and it's a Class B offense normally, that can be enhanced due to the person being a gang member. So there are a lot of different offenses that fall under that. Another one I want to talk about is engaging in organized criminal activity. A lot of people think they know what that is, organized crime, right? White collar crime and things like that. That's not necessarily the case. A lot of the offenses that we investigate, we can file under that, and we have filed under that. If you think about it, most drug offenses would meet this category because you have 3 or more people involved. They all profit from the proceeds of that illegal activity. So drug offenders, if you have 3 people that commit a bank robbery and they're going to split the proceeds, that's organized crime. So a lot of different offenses pertain to those as well. Most of the other ones, I think you know what those are and are familiar with them. If you have any questions about any of them, I'll be happy to answer those questions. So there are several different ways a property can be declared a nuisance. The Attorney General's Handbook provides a couple of examples. The first one is documentation of illegal activity on the property for a 2 to 3 year time period. The second is an inordinate number of calls for police service and 6 or more arrests for the same type of illegal activity within the last 6 months to a year. There's no definite standard out there. It's up to the courts to decide what is a nuisance or not. That's the only way it can be determined. These are just examples. They're not necessarily guidelines that we have to abide by. So I want to talk about this chart a little bit, and I'll start off by explaining what the columns are. So AGA, that's aggravated assault. Drugs is all drugs to include marijuana. DWI and PI are self-explanatory. ROB is robbery. SXA is sexual assault. And UCW is unlawful carrying of weapons. And then the last one is weapons. The reason there are 2 weapons categories is some weapons are illegal just by themselves. Nunchucks and brass knuckles used to be illegal. I think they're legal now
like bombs.
as of the last statute. But one category is strictly for handguns, weapons. And then the other one are all those other ones. So what we did in 2017, we looked at every hotel in the city and ran their crime stats. And these are actual criminal offenses that we took reports for. The only ones that we listed on this chart are the ones that are 4 and above. The city of Dallas utilizes a 3 offense month as a nuisance. Their courts have agreed with that. So if they have 3 similar offenses within a 30-day time period, that can be declared a nuisance. So that's why we went with 4. We didn't have any that had 3 within a 30-day period. So that left us with these hotels. You'll see that 5 of them are highlighted. The reason those are highlighted is because the grand total was in double digits. You'll probably notice that one offense tends to jump out at you, and that is the drugs.
Need to go back.
That's all right. The drug offenses, that's what we commonly see at hotels. No different than any other city. If you poll any other city in the Metroplex or anywhere else, it's going to be the drug offenses that occur the most at hotels. But what happens with drug offenses is they lead to other crimes. We've investigated several murders and things like that all have a drug nexus to them. And a lot of other offenses are the same way.
Last year was a weird year for us because we had 3 homicides. 2 of them were drug related. So it makes it even more important why we should address it from that standpoint, in my opinion.
So that was 2017. We wanted to go back a little bit and see what these same hotels look like over prior years. So we went back to 2014 and ran all the numbers for the hotels then, and you'll see that most of them still had double-digit years. The Budget Suites in Texan Inn had double digits every year. So did the Motel 6. The Econo Lodge had 1 year that that they did not have double digits. Suburban Extended Stay had 1 year where they did have double digits. In-town suites, all single digits, although 2 of them were real close to 10. And then you see the Select Inn, it's in our top 5 in 2017, but the prior 3 years was relatively low. So we wanted to see what was going on there. So what we would do with 2018 going forward is see if that trend continues. If that trend continued, then we would want to look at them as well. So these are the top 5, and then these are the locations of the top 5. And you'll see that 4 of the 5 are right along the Interstate 35 corridor. The other one's the Budget Suites that is on 121, which is also a busy corridor as well. So the recommended action plan that we would do through the PD, the city attorney's office, Liz has indicated that she would do some sort of certified letter to the property owner to seek compliance with the nuisance or with the crime reduction strategies. We would ask those property owners to stipulate to those reduction strategies, and then we would evaluate for compliance and crime reduction. As a last resort, we could always file the lawsuit. Now, what the colony did in the example I gave earlier, they filed the lawsuit first and then talked to them about the crime reduction strategies. So these are some examples of crime reduction strategies. The AG's office, through their handbook, they give some examples of what those could be. I'll hit on just a few of them here. A lot of hotels have rules of conduct, and a lot of ours do as well. They abide by recommendations of the crime prevention survey. We would send our neighborhood resource officers out to the property to do a complete inspection of the property. And we would want the property owner to abide by what that survey showed. The criminal record check for all guests over the age of 18, that would just be for serious violent offenses. It would be the only offenses that would keep someone from renting a room. We do not want to violate the Fair Housing Act or anything like that, and the AG's office does this as well. And you can see some of the other ones. I won't go through all of them. A lot of them are, real nuisance things like inoperable vehicles and things like that that tend to bring the criminal element in. So the benefits of this approach, we believe, allows the property owner to work with the city before any legal action. It develops a partnership between the property owner and the police department. And then if there's no cooperation, we still have the stick, so to speak, with the lawsuit that we could file. The downside of this approach, there's significant staff time throughout the process. The good thing with this, the way we've designed this right now, is it's staff intensive on the police department up front. We would utilize our neighborhood resource officers, so there would be no additional manpower needed. But it could be several months until a resolution is reached. By the time the property owner does the crime reduction strategies and we see the success that we want to see, it could be several months and even longer if a lawsuit has to be filed. The other downside is it could be perceived as unfriendly towards business. Chief Gerbo mentioned the 2013, and the hoteliers didn't like that process because they felt like they were being picked on. We think this is a little bit better because we're only looking at the hotels that we have identified as having a problem. And we would have the set boundaries to define what that problem is. The program could be expanded if proven to be a success. Any property can be declared a nuisance. So apartment complexes, trailer parks, residences, and businesses could all fall under this in the future. Future considerations, if it does get to a lawsuit, Liz has indicated there may be a need to contract with a third-party law firm for litigation costs. That's very staff intensive there. But there will be no need for additional personnel due to the neighborhood resource officers. A future step might be to pass an ordinance that would require inspections of hotel and motels that fall into the nuisance category. And that would be Claire's staff.
Okay. And that probably would be an additional staff person.
So that's that. Me and Chief Kerbo will be happy to answer any questions you may have.
I've got a couple questions, and I don't know how this works as far as like the reporting and all the drug activity that happens. But is there any concern that, you know, say, I don't know, whatever it is, the Texan Inn is having drug trafficking and problems and everything? Do they all of a sudden going, oh my gosh, they're looking at us. If we call this in, we're going to be in trouble. So they tell the front desk agents and the owners go, we don't call in any crimes because that'll just put us more on the radar.
Yeah, that is a concern that we also saw in some of the ordinances that were written, and many of those elicit the help of the property owner and the manager to report things to us, and they didn't count those calls against them. So we'd be the same way. The criminal offenses that Kevin described were those where we took a report from somebody. It could be the property manager, or it could be the person staying in the room. It could be something our guys witnessed on site and just initiated the report. But we wouldn't count those kind of calls against them. We would explain that.
Okay.
We want their help to call us whenever there's a problem.
Okay. And the criminal background checks, how do they do a criminal background check on every one of their guests?
Well, there are a couple of different ways you can do. There are online services that you can do that with. Publicdata.com is one of them. They could get an account with the Texas Department of Public Safety and run them. And that stuff can all be done online. You know, it might be the next morning before you know what the results of that would be. You know, so it's possible somebody could rent a room tonight and you don't get the background check until sometime in the middle of the morning, and then you get rid of them the next day.
Okay.
Other questions? I think and I understood the presentation from the chief, the recommendation that they're looking for direction from you is to go ahead with an approach that, my summary at least, is identifying nuisance properties rather than looking at wholesale hotels, using an approach of working with the owners first, initiating a lawsuit if necessary after that. That's kind of the approach you'll recommend.
That's exactly it. Lawsuit would absolutely be the last resort.
So what we're looking for from you all is direction. Should we take that approach, or is there something else you'd like to see?
I'll take two.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, I love this path that you're going, and I think one of the concerns y'all had was, you know, appearing unfriendly to business. But, you know, there's 5 businesses, and they've been unfriendly to Louisville. So if they think we're being the bad guy, then they've got another thing coming.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. Thank you, Councilman.
Chief,
I'm for it.
and Chief knows I've been rattling around on this can for a couple of years now, and I've had an opportunity to talk with Carrollton, because they kind of were the model at the time. But I talked with their chief, and he actually is preferring what Chief Kerbo's talking about here, simply because he feels like it has more teeth. He says the upfront costs are more because we have to spend the time and the legwork to get everything documented and have the PD there, but we have more teeth on the back end. I mean, the worst case scenario on this is we own a hotel. I mean, that's what the ultimate, if they keep pushing. So, but we've locked it all down, and if you can get the AG on board with you, your chances are that it's a pretty locked tool. So I'm pleased with it. I think it's exciting to see. Hopefully they'll find an opportunity to work with us instead of against us.
Well, that's our desire too. Is, you know, it'd be a whole lot easier if they would work with us, and if they don't, then we'll force them.
The nice thing about this approach too is it can be fairly immediate.
Yes, it would be much quicker than you guys trying to pass an ordinance, and then, you know, a great deal of inspection time has to occur up front of every facility, not just the ones that are the worst offenders. And I think those guys would have a significant pushback, probably see a lot of civil action if we were to try to do that. So I think this is the better approach.